Hey everybody, welcome back. Just decided I'd pop in here with a little midweek special. So if you are looking at the title that I've put on this video, I am going to be talking about sex offenders and my feelings on the sex offender registry. And if you feel that may be uncomfortable for you, I would advise that you turn the video off right now, because what I have to say is going to be controversial to a lot of people. So, sex offenders. We've all heard of them. Most people are afraid of them. You hear stories on the news of sex offenders who just commit these horrendous crimes. And, so we have this tendency to be fearful. More often than not, it's actually, sex offenders are not as dangerous as you would think. Perfect example, and I've known quite a few people that this has happened to, is there might be a young man who is 18 or 19 and sleeps with the young woman who just, happens to be under 18, which in our state and most states is the age of consent. There may be an older young man with his underage girlfriend, or it may be that this young man is out and doesn't realize there's a younger woman in the crowd, and gets involved with her. What's really scary is that even in those situations, he is most likely going to be charged with a sexual assault of a child. And it's really an ambiguous term, I feel, because on the one hand, you've got the true child predators over here who are very dangerous, and then on the other hand, here you've got, basically these young men who slept with their underage girlfriend and, are no danger at all. And you have no way of knowing which is which because they're labeled the same. So those labels, those charges are very ambiguous, and you have no way of knowing who's dangerous, who's not. The majority of cases, they're not dangerous. Getting into personal experiences, I do have a former classmate from high school who was charged with a sexual assault of a child, who actually did his due diligence and checked her ID prior to being intimate with her, and she had a fake ID that said she was 18, and then he still ended up paying for it, doing time. So it's all scary that those things can happen. Also, in terms of sex offenders and sex crimes, there are cases in which a woman, either a girlfriend or a wife or former, may accuse her partner or previous partner of sexual assault or rape as revenge, because she's angry with him. That happens, quite frequently too. Unfortunately, that men are falsely accused, and it ruins their lives. I recently started doing some research into this because, and actually, to go back, the reason that I feel so strongly about sex offenders in the registry is because my husband is a sex offender. And that's, you're probably sitting there thinking I'm absolutely crazy, but I know exactly why he's there. I know what he's accused of, and I am 110% confident that he is not a danger. So I'm not going to get into details, but I am absolutely certain that once he is released, he will never be a danger. So recently I was doing some research and came across a study. I was looking at recidivism rates for different types of criminals and came across a study that was done by the Bureau of Justice Statistics that followed, released felons over a 9-year period and to see if they were re-arrested, reconvicted of the same offense. So what that study actually found is that sex offenders have the lowest recidivism rate of any type of offender. They found that over this 9-year period, only 7.7% of sex offenders were reconvicted of another sex offense. So to put that in perspective, 92.3% of sex offenders will never reoffend. That's something to think about. Because I know that the general assumption out there is that that number is very high. Truth be told, it isn't. 7.7% of sex offenders will be convicted of another sex crime. They are more likely to be convicted of an unrelated crime than another sex offense. And of those who are convicted or resentenced, actually, a lot of the guys that get sent back to prison are there for crimeless revocations, which means that they have been put back in prison for not following the rules that were set forth by their judgment of conviction, which is their release conditions, or the rules that have been set forth by their probation officer. So of those who are resentenced to prison, the majority of them are crimeless revocations rather than another crime that they've committed. So the sex offender registry. I understand that what its intent is. And I think that in theory, it has good intentions. But in practice, it really fails. The reason being, a person can commit one sex offense or be convicted of a sex offense that they may have not even done and be placed on the registry for life. They'll not have difficulty finding housing. They'll have difficulty finding a job. They will have difficulty getting in a relationship. And, everybody is going to be fearful of them because of that sex offender label. So I disagree with the registry in its existence entirely, because we don't have a registry for drunk drivers who, especially if you live in the state of Wisconsin, as I do, know that there are many drunk drivers who do it over and over and over. So drunk driving, reoffenders, murderers, drug dealers, people who commit robberies, white collar crime, embezzlement. There is no other registry for any other type of offender. They specifically single out sex offenders because somehow they think they're more dangerous. They're not. And so, my feeling is that we either need to create a registry for every type of offender or just abolish the sex offender registry. So the other part of being on the sex offender registry, because it's not just having your name on a list that somebody can look up, is the fact that when any sex offender is released from prison, an announcement is made in the newspaper that such and such sex offender has released, this was their charges, and they are going to be living at such and such address. And you don't see that happening with drug dealers. You don't see that happening with murderers. I mean, they don't make an announcement when anybody else is released from prison, just sex offenders. So, that's one thing that we'll have to deal with. Also, My husband will be on many, many years of extended supervision, which means that we will have a parole officer that coming to our house. They'll be able to look around and inspect as they please. My husband will have to be accountable for his whereabouts at all times. If he's ever not where he says he was, he can be rearrested. There's a possibility that he could be on a GPS monitor. If that ever goes offline, even if, most likely it wouldn't be his fault, but if it ever goes offline, he can be picked up and put in jail for the night because the monitor was offline. Of course, I already mentioned this, there'll be trouble finding a job and housing. It's nearly impossible to rent with any felony, much less a sex crime on your record. And so, we've got a lot of baggage to deal with, and I don't expect anybody to feel sorry for me because I know what I was signing up for. I know that even amongst prison wives, those of us who are married to sex offenders are considered the lowest of the low. So, the few of us who do admit to it, we got to stick together. So, I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of research, and I've talked to people who are in a similar situation as to what I'm in to know what exactly I would be dealing with when my husband's released. There's a chance that we may not ever be able to live in the same house. And so that is something that I am aware of. And that's a real possibility. I have a friend who is also on the registry, and he was released from prison in 2011. So he has been out for 10 years, has never committed another crime. The only time that he's ever been picked up is when his GPS monitor goes offline. Spends the night in jail. They let him go the next day because, it's not his fault, but it's just, that's of course what they're going to do. They're not going to give the person the benefit of the doubt. They're going to pick him up. Not only are we going to be subject to having a parole officer coming into our house, my husband is going to have to take some kind of classes that will be at our expense when he's released. He will have to pay supervision fees, and we'll have to have regular meetings with his parole officer. Someday I may go over that list with you. It's about a mile long as far as what rules that he's going to have to follow when he comes out. It's pretty long, pretty ridiculous, even. Regardless of how we feel about it, we are going to have to play by those rules. We're going to go back to prison. He will not be allowed to cross state lines without prior permission from his parole officer, who could just deny it for the reasons like they're just having a bad day. If he were to make a request, he will never be able to get a passport and travel internationally. And won't be able to vote. He won't be able to vote until he's considered as having paid his debt to society, which would mean when he's released from supervision, which he's got about 30 years of supervision, so he'll probably never be able to vote. So, I know that what I say, and you're probably looking at me going, you are insane for getting involved with somebody who has these, his record. I didn't do it lightly. Before we even became emotionally involved, I said, look, if there's even a chance that we're going to become, be involved in a relationship, you need to be truthful with me about what you're here for. Because I knew he was in for a sex offense, but I didn't know the details. So he has been very honest with me about that. And I obviously felt comfortable with it because here we are. And even when I continued coming to see him, I was like, after all the stuff happened with my ex, I was like, there's no way, I know what it's like to be involved with a sex offender because I have this other friend who's going through it. And, I just know what kind of a headache that's going to be. This is not what I need in my life. Like, I'm not going to fall in love with this guy because I just don't need all of that stress. And here we are. So I am going to turn off comments on this video because I know there are going to be a lot of people that are really angry about what I'm saying. And that's your right. But if I have reached just one person today and caused you to think, a little bit and perhaps open your mind just a little bit to the possibilities, then I've done my job. And my job, is what I feel I'm responsible for is providing truthful information to just, to share my story and to just, I've put it all out there, to just be informative. I hope that you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. I'll see you in a few days for my regular video, but I appreciate you being here. I hope that you will hit the subscribe button below. Please do give me a thumbs up and let me know that you like it, and hit the bell icon so that you get notified of my new videos.